Hi, everybody. So, we're going to talk about alchemy of emotions today and what I've learned through the fire over the last 15 years or so of, intense rock bottoms, intense crises in my life, and how to actually work with these things. Now, just for a moment, astrologically, if you have a lot of Scorpio, if you have a lot of water placements, you'll probably want to tune in. And even if you don't, I do believe that we're all here to learn about emotions and why they're here and how to actually work with them. And so, Alchemy of the Heart is officially open for people to jump in. We're going to be starting in 2 weeks on Monday, the 22nd of June. So, I wanted to give you a taste of what we'll be doing in this program. And even if you don't decide to join us, I want to give you a taste of how I've learned to work with emotions in a much more productive way. And so, for the most part, humanity at large still is not adept at working in the emotional landscape. And so, although with the rise of interest in inner work and shadow work, spirituality, and all of the things, we're definitely making progress. And I even see this on the side of men as well. They are learning how to balance the head and the heart and be open and more adept themselves at traversing the emotional landscape. You could say that people who lean more towards feminine energy or women, there is a truth to the fact that we have a little bit more accessibility for a multitude of reasons of this landscape. However, there's also an interesting imbalance that can occur with the polarities. And so I'll touch upon that today in terms of actually being too far over here in the feminine realms, which don't forget there's a higher expression and there's a shadow expression of both sides, as well as the masculine realms. There's a higher and lower expression of both. So, alchemy of the heart and the way I work with alchemy is actually the union of both of these energies working in complementary balance. And so this program and alchemy in general really teaches us how to face the tougher stuff of life to be able to turn it into something higher. And so it's, metaphorically the simplest way to kind of enter into this conversation is that there's a truth to the fact that alchemy, on a metaphorical perspective, is turning lead into gold. The seeming tough stuff, challenges, hard stuff, pain, suffering, even trauma of our life to be able to transmute it. And so this process is very misunderstood and often misapplied to people that maybe are drawn to alchemy and how to do it. So I really am interested to share this work with people. So we're going to cover the alchemy of fear, anger, shame, sadness, grief, even the alchemy of death, because I've had a recent transformation in my life where I was shown the deep, deep, deep levels of grief and death and how death is the ultimate alchemy, which I know sounds really deep and maybe, and if you think about all the things that humans like to avoid, this is definitely one of them. The reason why it's so Scorpio is that Scorpio has to do with the underworld journey. It very much is associated with shadow work, being able to actually turn towards and face the tough stuff of life, the taboo stuff, the stuff that most people shove under the rug. Scorpio is not interested in sweeping under the rug. They're actually very interested and drawn to it. The lower expression of Scorpio can romanticize it, become kind of like that whole goth identity and get stuck in it. The highest expression of Scorpio is actually the alchemist, to be able to go through the underworld journey and come up and out. So all of this we're going to be talking about in Alchemy of the Heart. And so I wanted to share today that there's these two ways of dealing with these tougher emotions, the more dense, difficult emotions: fear, anger, sadness, grief, shame. These are even on Hawkins, map of consciousness. These vibrate at the lower levels of consciousness, lower levels of frequency. However, on this path, we don't avoid, we don't bypass. So I do see that there's kind of like these two ways that most humans approach all of this, that they either avoid it, they don't want to go there, right? They suppress. They do all the things that they can do not to face these things, right? And I have such compassion for that. I think this is definitely a chapter of most of our lives, maybe longer than a chapter that many people go through. And so we have compassion because why? Because it's hard. People don't want to go there. Depending on our level of resilience, the space that we have, the energy that we have, the other things going on in our life, we don't always have the desire, the skills, the willingness, the time, the energy to go into these things, right? And especially if we've been avoiding for a lifetime, then it can feel like a mountain that is absolutely impossible sometimes. And so this is where I'll just say with lots of love, I learned this in my own life, and this is one of those universal laws that if not in this lifetime, eventually, on a soul level of evolution, we're going to be forced to face these things because we can't skip steps. And this program is all about how we can actually empower ourselves to understand that this is a path of soul evolution. We're here for a reason. Humanity, being a human life is not always easy, depending on all of our karma, even our astrological blueprint. There are things that each and every one of us on a unique, individuated level of souls come into this life to learn and experience. If you know anything about my story, I haven't had an easy life starting from all the way back in childhood. And so there's been these three major times in my life that have been very dark, very, very dark. So I had a choice to either stay stuck and allow these things to continue to weigh me down, or I could actually wake up and start to work with these things in a more productive way. So that's why I'm very devoted to alchemy. And to be honest with you, I didn't run towards this path, skipping, like I want to do this. It actually was forced in a way such that I couldn't avoid it. It got to be that crisis moment in my life where I did hit rock bottom and I didn't have another choice. I had to surrender up everything. Up to that point, I was doing a lot of avoiding of the tougher stuff in my life. Even as a psychologist back then, I started practicing in 2011. My rock bottom happened in 2014 to 2016. So even as a practicing psychologist at that point in my life, I thought for some reason that I could get that free pass, that I didn't have to go back to childhood stuff and I didn't have to deal with it. I was exempt, or so I thought. And I was really good at sweeping things under the rug. And I'm going to tell you with much compassion that the more that we can actually accept and know that these things are not deleted, they don't go anywhere, they actually stay in our bodies, our energetic field, and everything's tracked, right? On a level of the thing that loves us more than we could ever know has a plan for us. They have a curriculum that we need to go through. And so if we continue to bypass the tougher emotions and the pure golden lessons that are in each and everything that is served up to us, and also, by the way, although we're talking about the tougher emotions, yeah, in my work, I also don't shy away from the absolute beauty and heights, which some people are also really good at avoiding. So there's also some polarities that are at play here. Some people avoid the tough stuff. Some people also avoid the heights of incredible, amazing life. That's more of the upper limit problem that I talk about. And so, in this program, I'm going to really teach you that we don't avoid the emotions because people have a tendency to either avoid the emotions or maybe they actually go into the emotions. This is sort of the flip side of it, but then they get stuck there. This is more of the imbalance of the shadow feminine. This is the imbalance of the shadow masculine over here, where we avoid and we don't go in. I have compassion for all of it, and so we should. It's not a judgment. It's just a noticing. that both of these choices that we make are not the path that our soul is actually requiring us to go down. We have to learn how to face the hard stuff with clear eyes, to be able to feel on a level of an open heart everything that we need to feel so we don't avoid the emotional feelings around all of this. But we also have to understand not to get stuck there, not to overly romanticize the feelings, not to cling to our trauma as these badges of honor that we wear that actually imprison us. And so this is an integration of learning the higher masculine and the higher feminine. And it's the marriage and the complementary energies of both of those. So let's just touch on fear. And I'm going to be releasing a series of videos that touch upon this work deeper and deeper, right? Since this is going to be coming June 22nd, my whole system is oriented towards this work. And so this is the content that I'll be releasing. I wanted to talk about the alchemy of fear today. I know fear really well because I had severe social anxiety for much of my life, and I didn't actually really heal it and transcend it until well into my 30s, well into my 30s. And so I know paralyzing fear, debilitating fear. And this is what fear does to us unless we actually learn how to face it and how to actually build courage, build strength, build resilience, and to be able to understand that every single tough emotion has a level of intelligence for us that we need to be able to. This is really, it's talking, this whole program represents a higher level of consciousness of how we can learn to work with what life is inviting us into, right? I'll just take a moment because it's coming through right now. The four elements, right, that I have, right? These are the alchemical symbols of the four elements, represent the four domains that we need to attempt to have work in harmony: the physical, the emotional, the mental, and the spiritual levels. Of course, there's the fifth element of ether, right? And that's beautiful. But here on the earth plane, the 3D level, we have to learn how to work with the four elements of the physical or the somatic level, the emotions, the mental level, and the spiritual level. These are two expressions of the masculine and feminine, right? The masculine is spiritual and mental. The feminine is emotional and somatic or physical. We need to be able to learn how to work with both. So this path, the path that I am on, right? My work isn't for everybody, but it's an integrated path where we actually work with both masculine and feminine. We work with these things internally and also externally. So sometimes I refer to this as the inner work and the outer work of relationships. It's actually very, very, very deep. And relationships are here for a reason for us. That's pretty much 90% of the body of my work has to do with relationships. Alchemy of the Heart is a more internal program of how we develop mastery of our emotional landscape in the best way possible. It's not mastery in terms of power over. It's actually mastery in terms of understanding the pure intelligence, right? Emotional intelligence is a thing. It seems like kind of a paradox. We often associate intelligence with, the mind, the mental realms. But physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, there's intelligence and wisdom on all four levels. When you start to get to the higher levels, these things merge back into one and the same, and the differentiation between these four levels start to become blurred. And so we know now, right, that all of these levels work together. Even when we think about medicine and seemingly physical health, people are really opening now to the understanding that all four levels are speaking to each other, right? We don't live in a vacuum. We don't just live in the physical, right? All of these four levels are speaking to each other and informing each other. They all work together. And so that's also what I want to imbue into this program. And so, although it seems like this deep inner work where we're tending to our internal emotional landscape, which is true, we know that our relationship in here profoundly influences our relationships and how we show up in them. So, as within, so without, our relationship with ourself and our emotional landscape and how we work with this consciously or unconsciously is going to profoundly mirror out into our lives, right? It's going to create our reality. It's going to flavor our relationships, our career, and everything else that we touch, right? And so this work is really important. So I do consider Alchemy of the Heart to be an absolutely foundational program. I first ran it a year ago. This will be the third time taking a group through it. I didn't realize how powerful it was that first time, but it absolutely was. So for me to also be able to see the evidence of how transformational and deep this work is on people's lives has made me come to the understanding that this is a program that I'll run over and over again. And so I am committed to running it at least once a year, probably twice. We're going to see how it goes. I also work very intuitively. Regardless, this isn't going anywhere, right? This particular work. However, you have to understand to listen to your intuition because each and every group that comes together is a uniquely crafted group of individuals who are meant to journey together. And so if you feel the call, please join us. I'll have all of the information in the description where you can read about, the dates that we'll be meeting, what we'll be covering, and please reach out to me if you have any questions. There's limited spots available. We start 2 weeks from today, from the recording of this video. So the alchemy of fear is something where we have to first be able to understand the difference between warranted fear, which is healthy fear, which is meant to protect us in situations that are actually not for our highest good. They're dangerous. They're actually dangerous. That's healthy fear. We shouldn't ever strive to become fearless because then we actually are removing, right? The purpose of fear in its highest expression is to actually protect us and alert us to real danger. And so that's healthy fear. We need to be able to discern and differentiate between healthy fear and neurotic fear, right? We call it neurotic fear, fear that is not warranted, fear that comes up, anxiety that comes up in situations that actually it's not warranted in that situation. These are the imprints from former conditioning, programming, trauma. And this is what we need to be able to heal, right? So that we actually don't allow this neurotic fear to take over our lives. And so the Alchemy of Fear module, which goes deep, 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 each and every week, we cover a different emotion, is life-changing. And so I'm not going to give you all of the things here. I invite you to come join us, but I was able to learn how to face my fear and really to be able to build to, if you think about the polarities, right? This is everywhere in my work, integration of the polarities, understanding seeming opposites and how they support each other. So the way that we actually work with the neurotic fear is to balance it by building up, right? There's a weakness here. I'll just own it. There was a weakness for me in terms of courage, in terms of having a spine, in terms of being assertive with life, in terms of me actually being able to stand up straight and actually understand, right, that I am worthy of having a good life. It has to do with the reclamation of self-love and of courage. And it is so deep. There's so much here to it. And it also involves working with our present day life and the situations that come up to train our nervous system, to train our level of being, and really to train our soul to be able to know that we are sturdy enough to face the things that scare us, to be able to do the things slowly. Okay, you don't have to throw yourself off the cliff, but it does involve practice. All right, Alchemy of the Heart is extremely practical. There's homework, there's invitations on how to directly apply this work to your life. I don't teach in a way that's only theoretical. I actually want you to walk through the transformation now, right, with me. Apply it right now to your life. And so this is what we do. And we also couple it with the present day stretches that we need to do in addition to going back and working with the prior tough stuff that created all of these imprints in the first place. So it's a combination. And this is how I work with everybody, even my one-on-one clients, right? The present day stretches, We go back and we heal what we need to heal as needed, right? This is even working with polarities as well. And it's working with the masculine and feminine as well. And so, what else do I want to share about the alchemy of fear? Yeah, it's profound. This one, I mean, each and every one, right? The alchemy of fear. Can you imagine if you had a life where you weren't so afraid and you didn't have such anxiety? It's paralyzing. It will freeze you. And I know this one. I mean, I know this one so well. It almost makes me emotional because I understand that it really can hold you back, right, for a lifetime until there's a blessing that comes in and really shows us how to work with these in more constructive ways. Then we move to the alchemy of shame. Shame is this is a really deep one as well. All of these are really heavy hitters in terms of what they can provide us. So I'll make another video on the alchemy of shame, but hugely important for us to understand the difference between healthy shame and toxic shame, especially now in this culture that is demonizing all shame across the board. And there's a link between the article that I have on Substack. It's called The Shameless Society is a Narcissistic Society. We have to understand the difference between healthy shame that actually serves us and toxic shame, which is almost the absolute opposite of poison, of toxin, and erodes our self-esteem. It's a very important distinction that we need to make. I have a podcast episode all about shame, right? And leaning into healthy shame. So that'll give you a taste of the work that we start to do. That's just a couple episodes back if you tune into the podcast. And then we covered the alchemy of anger, another huge heavy hitter. There's so many people who come to me that are on the more passive side of things. One of the most common things that I need to help people with, learning about boundaries, learning how to become more assertive, learning how to stand up straight and build a spine. This is huge. This is all wrapped up in the reclamation of healthy, warranted anger. Anger in its highest expression exists for a purpose. We cannot pretend or demonize all anger at all. These things are very nuanced because toxic anger is absolutely terrible, right? Violence, war, abuse, right? All of these things. But the higher expression of anger is protective for us. And we need, a lot of people have suppressed or shut down anger. And in that module, I also talk about how when we actually suppress healthy anger, it can cause a lot of problems, especially health-wise. And so then we move into the alchemy of sadness, including alchemy of grief, the rock bottoms, the dark night, the alchemy of death. So as you can see in this program, in this course, we're going to be covering the gamut of the all of the stuff that humans love to avoid. And we're going to learn how to actually become sturdy so that we can face these things with a little bit more courage and wisdom to be able to become true alchemists. Otherwise, if we don't learn how to do this work, this is where we get into universal law and understanding soul evolution and the fact that we can't skip steps. These things are coming up for a reason. If we're not capable of facing these things, and I have compassion, I wasn't for a long time. I still am so human and on the path with you. But what I know for sure is that when we continue to avoid time and time again, life is just going to keep serving you up more and more and more opportunities so that you can actually learn, right? Because so there's a higher perspective here that's very, very useful to have because then you can start to work with life rather than against it. So this is the perspective that I have in all of my work with people. And this is like the video I just posted on victim mentality and why it's so dangerous is because the people who are stuck in victim mentality don't know how to do this work that I'm describing to you. So in a way, alchemy of the heart is really about us learning how to work with the tough stuff of our life to be able to create incredible lives beyond our wildest dreams, because that's the thing. When we learn how to move through these things and alchemize them, again, we're not bypassing, but we start to work with the polarities of the ascent and the descent process that is a universal law, has to do with the balancing of yin and yang, masculine and feminine, light and dark, And when we can learn how to work with both, we free up so much space in our systems to be able to allow the good in. And so the crazy thing is that the more that we actually go in and face the things that we need to, it frees up an incredible life. It doesn't happen overnight, but every step forward counts. I've been on this path of working with alchemy now, right, in my own way for probably at least the last 8 years on a practical applied level. Before that, I've always been connected to the esoteric studies and the occult realms. Since I was small, that was the spiritual path I've always been drawn to. But it wasn't until I actually was shown why these things exist beyond theory or learning about a thing or studying. Life actually asked me to start applying these of like, why do these things, what is the higher wisdom in alchemy? So I think I'm going to start to wrap up, but this program is going to be deep. And I didn't even talk about the final module, which actually has everything to do with relationship alchemy, because we look deeply at the drama triangle and how we can actually alchemize each of these three archetypes, which are currently running in their lower shadow expression, victim, persecutor, rescuer, and how it's not about deleting the triangle. It's not about stepping off of the triangle. It's about transmuting each of these three into the higher expressions. And so that's incredible work that goes hand in hand with relationship alchemy. And now my whole work beyond this program is relationship alchemy. How do we actually work with the patterns and the tough stuff of our life that's imprinted us to show up the way that we do in relationships unconsciously? And how do we start to work with this stuff consciously for healing, for growth, for evolution? So sometimes people call the type of relationships that I teach and live evolutionary relationships. That's a phrase that you can use, or conscious relationships, right? Or whatever you want to say. I often call this is the new paradigm of relationships. It's where we're being invited into. And so if this is interesting to you, check out Alchemy of the Heart. I would love to have you. It's going to be a deep and profound 7 weeks together, and you'll have access to all the materials for a good year afterwards because this is the work of a lifetime. So you're going to want to continue to carry this work forward and apply it. That's the main thing for me is that you apply it to your life, right? And I'm here for you. That's why, although Alchemy of the Heart is a self-study course that you can do at any time on my website, this is a live group version that's going to be very powerful because I'm right there with you. So you can get direct support from me. And the group itself, the groups are always coming together for a reason, those specific groups. So there's limited spots available, but we'll be starting in 2 weeks, and I'm really excited to continue to let you into this program and the depth of work. All right, talk to y'all soon.